Hi everyone, I hope all of you are doing well. So today we are going to discuss two topics, Indian freedom struggle and history of modern India. Now these two topics have to be studied only from these two books. There is nothing else you should really go for when you are studying for these two topics. For freedom struggle, you should look at the India struggle for independence, Bipan Chandra's book, which this is a very popular, famous book, and I think this book is sufficient, and there is no more need to study anything else for India's struggle for independence if you have studied this book really well. And the second book is the Modern India book, Spectrum. Now, this book, how is it different from this book, from Bipan Chandra book? Spectrum book has India's struggle of independence portion also, and then apart from that, it has portion which also includes the coming of the Europeans to India, to the Indian subcontinent, and it also has post 1947 history included in it. So these two additional portions are part of this book, which consist of the modern history of India, of course. So you should study that also. So for freedom struggle, you can completely depend on this book. Then for the rest two portions, that is post 1947 and coming of the Europeans to India, you can rely on this book, Spectrum book, and then you can use Spectrum book for revision also, because pretty much all the content given here in the freedom struggle book of Bipan Chandra is also there in modern India. Now, why am I saying that you should study from this book for freedom struggle and also refer to this book? The reason being that this book is in story format, so it is very nice to read, it is very interesting to read, and it will help you to kind of create a picture visualization in your mind of what was going on at that time. So that's why I recommend you must use this book for freedom struggle. And for revision purposes of freedom struggle, you can just rely on the Spectrum book because it would be easier for you to just revise the facts, factoids, etc. information, as it is given in a informational format in this book. It is not given in a story format. So I feel both the books are important, and interchangeably you can use these books. So that's why I've said here sources are Bipan Chandra's book, Spectrum book. For both freedom struggle and modern India, you can use Spectrum book. Now if you are a kind of a person who doesn't need to study from a story format, then you can just rely on Spectrum book. That's okay. And then previous year questions, of course, because you want to understand how questions are being asked in UPSC in order to be able to effectively study these books. Now, how to study these two books? That is the more important question. ये सब लोग recommend करते हैं यही पढ़ना है, but कैसे पढ़ना है? How to study, that is more important. So first of all, you should study Bipan Chandra book cover to cover. Start with the chapter first, the first major challenge, the revolt of 1857, and go through the last chapter, 39th chapter, the Indian national movement, the ideological dimension. All these chapters you should study. There are 39 chapters, almost 500 pages, and it will take you almost 25 to 35 days to study this entire book. Why? Because almost you can study, let's say you can study up to 15 to 20 pages per day. If you are able to study 15 to 20 pages per day, then I think you can easily complete it in 25 days. I feel that for this particular book, you will see there are some chapters which are short, which are only 10 pages, and some chapters which are long. So you can also study chapter wise. You can decide that, okay, the first chapter is around 20 pages, the second chapter is 10 pages. So I will just study the first chapter on the first day. Then second day, I know this chapter is only 10 pages, so I will maybe study 2 chapters. So you can study page wise also, or you can study chapter wise also, whatever is more comfortable to you. Because of course I feel like if you have started a chapter, you would like to finish it, right? You don't want to leave it in middle. So that's why I say that you can study multiple chapters which are shorter together, and the longer chapters you can study just one chapter in one reading. So how to study this particular book? See, I have given examples here. Let's say you're studying this chapter number 3, peasant movements and uprisings after 1857. Let's say you're studying this. So you start studying this. The things that you need to focus on or underline or try to remember is these things: personalities, organizations, literature, major events and their components, what were the major events and what happened in those events. What are the date of those events, especially the big ones you should know. What are the various pacts, acts, charters mentioned, committees mentioned, and movements and other terms that are mentioned in that particular chapter. These are the things you should definitely underline and try to maybe make short notes of, so that you can easily revise and recall later. So for example, let's say I start reading this chapter, present moments. This is in story format. Like if you start reading this, you will see it is worth taking a look at the effects of colonial exploitation of Indian peasants. Colonial economic policies, the new land revenue system, the colonial administrative and judicial systems, and the ruin of handicrafts, leading to the overcrowding of land, transformed the agrarian structure and impoverished the peasantry. In the vast zamindari areas, so now here they have given the italics mein, so this is definitely important. In the vast zamindari area, the peasants were left to the tender mercies of the zamindars who rack rented them and compelled them to pay the illegal dues and perform begar. So you should try to understand what was begar, what was the zamindari system like, and where was it practiced in India. And then the second was the Royatwari areas. The Royatwari areas, the government itself levied heavy land revenue. So there were two types of systems, most big on the bigger scale, Zamindari and Rayatwali. The Mahalwari system was also there. But then you should study ki Zamindari system, what was it, Rayatwari system, what was it, and how it was levied by the government. So these are the important terms. You can make short notes of these kind of things. So like this story format you will read, you will come across the first one here. Many dispossessed possessions took to the robbery, dacoity, and what has been called social banditry, preferring these to starvation and social degradation. And the most militant, so here after this paragraph, they are coming to the most militant and widespread of the peasant movements was the Indigo Revolt of 1859 to 60. So this is the first revolt of the peasants that has been mentioned in this book. And then further they tell you about that particular movement. So you should make a short note of this particular, movement and write the main features of this particular movement, or write the main personalities involved in this movement. Write the main organizations, if any, involved in this movement. If there was any literature related to this movement. What were the major events that happened during this movement? What were the major dates? If any acts, pacts, charters were surrounding or committees were formed for this particular movement. Okay, that is important. So any terms related to like lathyals, who are lathyals? So these kind of, like for example here, if you come here, yes. So here, once you read this chapter, they will mention a lot of things, significant features of the Indigo Revolt. What was the role of the intelligentsia of Bengal, which was getting involved in this movement. So for example here they will mention outstanding in the respect was the role of Harish Chandra Mukherjee, the editor of Hindu Patriot. So now you should remember, underline this, and you should make this in your short notes, that Harish Chandra Mukherjee involved in Indigo movement through the Hindu Patriot. This was the literature, or this was the whatever magazine he came out with, and he used to publish regular reports from his correspondence in rural areas. So these kind of things are important, because UPSC will pick up something like this. It might pick up something like this. Deen Bandhu Mitra's play Neel Darpan was to gain great fame for vividly portraying the oppression of the planters. So these kind of things are very important. So that's why I say make short notes of these particular components which will appear in the exam. उसके बाद क्या है? Then the second thing is, after reading that particular book, you should also do the previous year questions from UPSC papers alongside with the book and analyze your performance. So let's say you have read 5 chapters. Try to see if some previous year questions are there from those 5 chapters and try to solve them and see whether you are studying in the way the UPSC is asking the question. Okay. Now, other parts of the study technique are that the first reading can be a quick reading. So for example, if you're reading from Bipan Chandra, this first reading can be a quick reading so that you can get an understanding of overall story, what was going on. Then once you have an overall story in your head, कि क्या चल रहा था उस time पे, then in the second reading you can go more into details. Okay. And finally, in the third reading, you can use the spectrum book for revision purposes and to fill in any of the remaining gaps. So let's say you've studied full freedom struggle of India in one reading, you understand it, and you feel like you have a good hold on it because you have done some previous year questions, then you can directly go into spectrum for revision the next time revision, because it will give you some refreshment. You know, same book पढ़ते रहते हो तो थोड़ा सा monotony हो जाता है, boring हो जाता है. So you can then read this book to just kind of refresh and fill in any of the gaps if you have, or you can just stick to this book only. That is also fine. Excuse me. That is not a big deal. All right. This is my technique of studying, so that's why I'm telling you. I used to first read from Bipan Chandra and then revise from spectrum, and then make short notes on these following things. These, if you remember कि ये सब मेरे को ध्यान रखना है, when I'm reading a particular chapter I have to remember these things. It will become much easier for you to study, because these are the things from which UPSC asks questions. Then finally, after you've studied the Bipin Chandra book, you should move to the spectrum book to read what? To read the coming of the Europeans to India, which is given in chapter 4, 5, 3. These are the chapters in which it is given. Okay, and then and you should read in this particular chronology. First you should read chapter 4, 5. Chapter 4 is India on the eve of British. पहले ये पढ़ लेना. उसके बाद chapter 5 expansion of British, and then you can go to chapter 3, which was the advent of Europeans. So I basically like to study British first and then advent of Europeans, because that way it makes more sense and it's easier. Alright, so uske baad then I have given from this portion. This portion is mostly Indian freedom struggle. Okay, so Indian freedom struggle jo hai, till chapter 32 they have given in this book, I think. So if you look at this book, till chapter 32 they have given Indian freedom struggle. So if you feel like, you can read from this book also. All whatever is in this book is given in this book also for freedom struggle part. So this is the freedom struggle part, and you can study from this book like I have given here. And then unit 10 is independence and after. What happened after 1947? Okay, independence is after this unit 10. This portion, independence is after, is something I feel like is optional, because you will anyway study this in other books of UPSC also, I think. So you can study this. It's not as important. यहाँ से कभी questions नहीं पूछे जाते. So I don't think you should focus too much on this, waste your time too much on this. If you have some time, then only go for this. Otherwise you can skip this. And then chapter 1 and chapter 2 you can totally skip. Not many questions are coming from this. But freedom struggle अच्छी तरह कर लेना. मैंने भी जब, for example, I will give you my personal example. I did not really do this advent of Europeans in India that much, because it was too much. It was too much information, too extensive. So I only did Bipan Chandra, and then I revised only the freedom struggle part. These chapters from this book. Okay. So this is how you should go for studying for India's struggle for independence. I will show you some questions, previous year questions that are there, so that you can get an idea whether you are preparing in the right direction. All right. So here, if we look at the Indian national movement questions, I usually look at always from the back of the latest year, 2021. All these questions are available easily in Bipin Chandra's book. For example, Shah Nawaz Khan, Prem Kumar Singh and Gurbaksh Singh are remembered as what? They are given in this book. Straightforward aa gaya question. Songs from the prison, a translation of ancient Indian religion lyrics in English. So who is this associated to? I'm not sure if this is in this book. See, to be honest, I don't remember, but I think it might be there. So then 8th August 1942 related to what? Given in this book. Indian Gandhi Avan Pact given in that book. Desher Khatha again given in that book. Ulgulan is also given in this book. Mentioned is this book. So similarly, most of these questions, if you go through this previous year questions, are actually mentioned in this Bipan Chandra's book. But the only way to get these questions right is by focusing on studying these. पर्सनालिटीज, ऑर्गेनाइजेशन, लिटरेचर, मेजर इवेंट्स, कंपोनेंट्स, डेट एंड इवेंट्स, पैक्ट्स, एक्ट्स, चार्टर्स, कमिटीज, मूवमेंट्स, टर्म्स एटसेट्रा. इस पे फोकस करोगे तो अच्छा आपका एग्जाम प्रिपरेशन हो जाएगा. So I think this was a very comprehensive video on these particular topics. If you have any other questions, do let me know. Happy to answer. Take care. Bye bye.